Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the fifth week of Writing for Mass Media. This is an exciting week, of course, because it means we're over the halfway point. And as we start this week, I want you to be thinking about everything we've learned so far, because you're going to need to know that and be thinking about it for exam 2, which will happen this Friday. This week is a little bit different than our previous week because there's no new information that will be shared with you. It's just preparing for exam 2. I want to go over exam 2 briefly just because it's a little bit different than exam 1. First, it has 2 parts to it. So make sure when you go to take the exam, you have left yourself enough time to take 2 parts. Each part is 75 minutes each. You likely will not need all 75 minutes because during the regular semester, everyone takes both parts during the 75 minutes together. So the likelihood of you needing 3 hours to take this exam is probably not high, but you will have that time to take the exam. The first part will look really similar to the first exam. It will have multiple choice questions, fill in the blank questions, short answer questions. That'll be related to all the materials we've learned so far. So that includes verbs, modifiers, punctuation, quotes, quote structure, as well as AP style, our vocabulary words, and our spelling words. You will see that there are specific lists for this exam. So make sure you go to the module and you check that out. Or you can go to the spelling and the vocabulary modules and they will have those lists there for you. So check those out and make sure that you have gone through those and you feel prepared. Now, the second part of the exam is the part I really want to focus on because I think it's the most realistic to what happens in the newsroom. My first job was working as a lifestyles editor, so it meant that I was editing stories day in and day out in addition to writing my own stories. So editing is a really big part, and this is not an editing specific class, but the knowledge that we've gained so far can help us look at a story and understand where the mistakes are. This will include punctuation issues. It may include word choice issues. It's going to include AP style issues. These are all things that we've been covering up until this point, and now you'll be looking at a story and trying to find those issues. I think this is a really fun section of the exam, and typically people do a little bit better on it than the first part. I think just because it's more engaging and it's more realistic. In addition to making it more realistic, the difference between the first part of the exam and the second part of the exam is during the second part of the exam, you can use anything you want in terms of your books, your notes. The only thing you can't do is talk to each other about it. That's the only rule. So, and this is exactly the way we take it in the classroom when this class meets in person. Is everyone brings their books, their notes, their excitement, and they sit down in the room. They get the article and they start going through and finding all the mistakes. Now, you also don't have to find all the mistakes. There are many more mistakes than you're asked to find. So it's all right. You may, if you decide that you're like, I'm not sure if that's actually a mistake or not, go and find another one. There are plenty of mistakes. I think you're finding 10 mistakes and there are over 20 mistakes. So there's plenty of opportunity there. So for the second part of the exam, you will have, you can have your books, your notes, anything you want basically except for each other to get through it. So if you have any questions, of course, during the exam on Friday, you can always email me. I will be available to you for most of the day so that I can answer any questions. So that is the exam. The other assignment that we have this week is our typical video assignment where you're going to be picking a news story that you think is interesting or that you think is important or just one you want to share with your classmates. And I want you to talk about it in context of the news values. So last week we talked about news values, tip cup, timeliness, impact, proximity, conflict, uniqueness, and prominence. So I want you to think when you're reading through your story, what is the 2 to 3 news values that are the most apparent, and maybe the reason why this article ran at this time, or why the article ran in this publication, or why this news story is one that you should be sharing with us, right? So all news stories will encompass several, if not all, of the news values, but some of them are going to be more prominent than others. So I want you to think about 2 to 3 of those news values and discuss the article within those contexts. So for example, 2 weeks ago, I shared with you the story about Justin Bieber and his diagnosis. And the reason I shared that with you was because he is prominent, right? I think every single one of you in this class know who Justin Bieber is. Even if you don't listen to his music, he is a pop star. He has been in popular culture. He's in the news pretty regularly. So he is a prominent character. So oftentimes stories that are important are because they're important because of the people that are in them. The same reason if, if the president or the chancellor of Troy was arrested, it would be on every news site. You'd see it on Facebook everywhere because he's a prominent figure. So stories about him are important, whether he's doing something good or doing something bad. In addition, that was a very timely story because Justin Bieber had just released that information. So lots of news organizations were talking about it because lots of people on the internet were talking about it. So those were two of the primary news values and the reason that they shared. Now, some people might say, well, this could have an impact, and it might have an impact. It obviously has an impact on Justin Bieber, but maybe it'll have an impact on other people who've had similar symptoms to go and get checked. We see this a lot of time in celebrity news when Angelina Jolie had her surgery, had her mastectomy because of having the BRCA1 gene. A lot of people were like, maybe I should get checked for that, or I've had a family member with history of breast cancer, so I should go and have myself checked. And so it could have an impact on those people who realize they haven't and may decide to take the measures to reduce their chances of getting breast cancer later in life. So we want to be thinking about news of all sorts. I'm sure if you have watched the news, you've listened to the news, you know that there was an election last week in the state of Alabama, so that has an impact. It's a special election that had an impact because it means who's going to go on the ballot in November of 2022. And that could be the person who becomes our next governor, our next senator, et cetera. And that has an impact on all of us. And also, those stories run ahead of time so people know to get out there and vote, of course. So I want you to be thinking about the story in terms of those news values. Make sure you use 2 to 3 of them. There's only one other assignment this week, and it is technically graded because Canvas will give you a grade. However, I won't be grading it. It doesn't count towards your final grade. It's just a practice to help you prepare really for the first part of the exam. There's no true practice for the second part because all the skills that you learn in this class, all the information from the lectures and from the exercises should help prepare you for the second part just in general. And of course, you'll be able to look at your notes and look at the books. And you can look back in any of the lecture slides, of course, during that time when you're taking the second part. So that's all the excitement for this week. I hope this week will be a chance for you to kind of recharge because there's no new information. And then we will be writing leads starting next week. And it's kind of a quick end of the semester because we basically spend a week writing leads, a week writing stories, and then bam, we've hit the end of the term. So things move very quickly from here on out. So make sure that you're keeping up with the work. If you have any questions, please let me know and I am happy to answer them. And I try to get back to your messages pretty quickly. I was out of town for most of last week and I'm out of town and I just got back. So hopefully we will have smooth sailing for this next week. Have a great week and I hope that your weather is as beautiful as my weather is today because it isn't too hot yet. Have a good one.